come to an end. The Philadelphia Flyers season is officially over. Was it a success? If you go online, I would say there are various degrees of opinions. Mine always tends to be the more optimistic, but the way I always see things is that it is a process. I mean, there's the generic statement from the Sixers, trust the process. And if you ask some of their fans today, maybe they wouldn't agree with that statement, but I would make the argument that they did not trust the process in the end. And that's something that the Flyers need to avoid here. I think it was a successful season in a lot of ways. I think anybody who says otherwise maybe didn't set their expectations properly this year. Not that I am not disappointed. I'd be lying if I told you I'm satisfied with losing in a Game 7 in Round 2. My thought always is championship. I mean, quite frankly, it's always championship. But I also know what a championship team looks like, or at least close to. And yes, my expectations were that this team could win a championship. I still believe that, actually. But it's definitely not all or bust. I mean, it's usually a process. We watched many organizations kind of work their way up to being very good, competing, losing in the second round, maybe even in the Eastern Conference Finals, maybe even taking a step back, maybe losing in the first round, and then, demolishing your opponent on the way to the Stanley Cup again, right? Like what the Tampa Bay Lightning are doing. There's all kinds of ways to go about this. There isn't one way. There isn't one recipe that screams championship team. There are elements of a championship team. There are recipes, right? It's like everybody has a cheesesteak, but everybody's cheesesteak tastes a little bit different, right? And that's really how you got to think of this, is that you're never going to have the perfect mix of guys that the same team had, and you're not putting together a Tampa Bay Lightning team overnight. Yes, you have examples like the Blues, right, which were a competitive team. They went out, they signed some players, and then made them competitive. They started off really, kind of in the bottom of the league. Fired their coach, turned everything around. Binnington was kind of on fire, and then they ended up with a championship. I think that is definitely more of a rare case, but there's all kinds of ways, right? You see coaches get fired, teams go to the Cup, but that's not the storybook type of way of going about this, and that's kind of what I want to talk about. I see a lot of trade this guy. I haven't seen trade Travis Konechny. That stuff makes me laugh. Like, personally, it makes me laugh. Like, I understand why people would. It's not that I wouldn't ever consider trading Konechny, right? If throwing out an idea here, right? If it's Konechny package to get a Leon Draisaitl, right? If that's an availability, I'm listening, right? You have my attention. If I have to do Konechny plus another really good player to get a super elite guy, that's definitely something I would consider doing. But to swap out a guy just because he didn't give you what you thought you were going to get out of him immediately off a 13-game sample size, in this, the situation with these teams, I mean, is Boston really not capable of winning the Stanley Cup? I don't know. They probably could do better if they had Rask, right? Little elements. So that's all I'm trying to say, is that there's not a lot of big differences here. But let's go through the successes. I think it was a successful year. I mean, from the forwards, yes, the team didn't produce. They didn't have the point getters that we typically have, right? Claude Giroux wasn't at the top of the league in points. In fact, it wasn't even at the top of the team in points. There were several guys above him this year, and that's uncharacteristic, but also it showed the team played really well on a two-way basis for majority of the season, and that was really impressive to see. We didn't have to have Claude Giroux playing at his best. And that's something I want to point out. I mean, not just Claude Giroux. There were times, even this year, and by the way, congrats to Sean Couturier for winning Selke. I don't even think it was his best season. That's the crazy part. I think he had a better season the season before that. And he won a Selke. That's how good of a player this is. And that's what I'm trying to say, is we need to slow down our expectations. we're not winning a championship over, this one short break here. It is disappointing. I do believe the Flyers could have done better, and maybe we do need to add a piece here or there, but it's mostly about adding, not subtracting, right? Like, if you're going to get rid of Voracek, right, if that's an idea that people have, and it's a fair one, okay, but if that's your solution to losing in the second round, what are you bringing in that's better? Are you going to guarantee that you're going to win that trade? What if it's just a horizontal move? What if the guy is not even better? What if he's just about the same with similar deficiencies? Because most goal-scoring, point-producing wingers are not going to be your best two-way players, even though he had his best two-way year ever this year. I think, if anything, this season is an indication of what's to come, right? We've built on so much. I mean, we made the second round for the first time in 8 years, right? Congrats to the Islanders for making the finals for the first time. I think it was 27 years, if I remember correctly. I mean, that stuff, obviously I'm disappointed. I think the Flyers could have played better. I don't think they played their best hockey for 90 to 95% of that playoffs, and I think a lot of you guys would probably agree with me on that. And that's where I think it's really disappointing, and I think that's why people are looking for who to blame. Blame the captain, right? It's always blame the captain, right? Blame this guy, blame that guy. Can't blame Kevin Hayes, can't blame that. Kevin Hayes crushed it all year round. You can't blame, you can blame all one particular player, but honestly, it was a team effort that I believe lost in those games. The offense didn't produce, the power play didn't produce. The power play is not one player. If anything, the Flyers utilized Giroux less on the power play than they ever have, which personally I think is part of the problem. And I don't know if people really understand how amazing of a playmaker he was. And even though it was so predictable to just give it to Giroux on the left side, was irrelevant. I'm not sure if that can happen again today, but I would definitely like to see him with the puck more in a stick on the power play. But these are things we need to fix, right? This team is a work in progress, and right now it seems to me that, and I've been saying this for a while, and I've been preaching it for a while, so obviously you've been hearing it for a while, but you include Patrick, you include Lindblom in this lineup, and the full playoffs, you talk about the hot ride they were on. Again, these are all idealistic, so they're irrelevant in the overall conversation, but you look at those elements, right? So you think about next season, think about your tools for next season. So you go, okay, well, I lost two guys, so what do I need to do? Maybe I need to add another center, like a veteran. That's what I think the Flyers really will look for, is a veteran center who can play third, fourth line center. It's not sexy, but a guy who's really good, like another Scott Lawton. I don't know if Pitlick gets re-signed, but if Pitlick can play center, that's the type of player we need on the fourth line, who can work the puck, drive play, do a two-way game. If the third line center gets injured, he hops. It's too critical of a role, that third line center. Patrick has still not played hockey, and Frost has not played yet at the NHL level on a consistent basis. Lashinsky is available. There's other good names. Rubtsov will probably be back. I'm not panicking at all for that third line spot. However, that fourth line spot becomes empty if the third line center moves up. And that's something that we just can't have anymore. It's a simple thing that must be fixed. If we can fix any and add a single elite player, it will require moving salary. Unfortunately, Ghost will be an element that probably has to be moved. I'll be quiet. He's sitting on the bench. It's a waste. It's a waste of his career. It's a waste of the Flyers' money. He's not supposed to be sitting on the bench. We have too many guys who can play that role, with Zamula, York, and countless other defensemen that will probably come down the line, and also with the slew of other guys. I'm not saying he's replaceable, but they're not using him. So why bother? They know it. The expansion draft's coming. He's the easy pickup, either him or Lawton, who the Flyers will probably try to protect at this point, because they're not going to be jumping to grab JVR at $7 million. Maybe if he's available, but that's really the guy. If you guys want to talk about moving salary to bring in a point producer, that would be the guy. I don't know if Chuck Fletcher is jumping for joy to make that type of move, especially because JVR is very close with the core of this team as well. I think you might bank on the fact that this team might maybe learn their lesson a little bit, right? Regroup. They don't have that much time off, but they have enough time where they can kind of regain their focus, come up with an off-season game plan. Next season's going to be a little bit different, but it's still going to be hockey. It's going to be intense, so they have to be ready for it. Maybe they're not going to be ready for next year, but I would just focus on adding depth. and I think that's really what the Flyers are going to do. Chris Marr and I were talking about maybe a guy like Eric Halla. I think that's an interesting pickup. He's obviously a very good player. The problem is we have to take on salary for this stuff. So that would require, like, Ghost has to move, right? Braun is probably not coming back. Grant probably gone. Thompson probably gone, right? Pitlick maybe. I mean, I think we all want Pitlick back, but how much does he want? I think if he can make what Raffle makes, I think it's a no-brainer. But, you know, when you talk about, like, maybe he wants $2.5 million, something like that, maybe he even deserves it. I'm not sure. That's kind of up to him and the negotiation team. But if he asks for a larger number, we really don't have much of a choice because, like I said, we need a center. That's without a question. They could bank on a younger guy, but again, with the injuries to Patrick, I don't think you can afford to do that, right? So you need another older vet, so you don't have to play Scott Laughton in that fourth line role. He's too good to be a fourth line center, and even if this guy is, what a great problem to have, right? I think they were hoping that Grant. I think they were really hoping that Grant would be that guy. But unfortunately, I don't know. I don't know if they were convinced, and I didn't see his skating in the playoff that would allow him to play center for at least the next 2-3 years. But maybe not even that long, at least 1 year for the Flyers, like the entire season. Like a guy who we would never even consider benching, kind of how Nate Thompson was used. And not a knock on Nate Thompson, because I actually think people, you know, offensively he's not giving you much, but defensively he did his job. He definitely laid it on the line. He had some really good plays. He got beat a lot too against better players, but again, he's a fourth line player. We need a guy who's a little bit better. That's the idea. Right? So we don't have to pick on Nate Thompson. But I do think overall, huge success. I mean, for the forwards, like, let's just go through it. Kevin Hayes, yeah. Great job, Kevin Hayes. I mean, during the season, I think he had some ups and downs. Finished it super strong in the playoffs. Obviously led the forwards in points with 4 goals, 9 assists in 16 games. Really strong performance. And what I was saying about the Keith Primo thing, you know, I was saying that day one when we got him, it seems like another Keith Primo element paid off in the playoffs. That's what we need. Physicality and speed. We have a lot of them. The team didn't play well enough to bring that out of our team. And I truly believe that. I don't think this team necessarily has a speed problem. Could we add extra speed? Sure, but if that was really a problem, Morgan Frost would have been playing. Like, if that was really a problem, there are young guys that we have in our system that are very fast. We didn't do that. There's a reason. There's a reason we didn't do that. And because that's not really the problem. That was not the problem with the Flyers' play. It was a lot of sloppy play and inability to sustain pressure. And a forecheck, a physical forecheck. I'll get to the defense, but a lot of that is due to the defense. So, and the forwards actually, it's a team defense issue essentially. So Scott Laughton, career year for him in my opinion, and I think a sign of things to come. I do think the Flyers protected for expansion draft. I think they want him here long term. If we lose him, it wouldn't be fun. But we could afford to lose Scott Laughton. He's a good player. He's a good player. You can use him all through the lineup. I don't think anybody wants to see him leave. And kudos to him for having a breakout year, and I think that will continue. And I think he solidified himself as a top 9 forward on this team. And that's fantastic. And I think that's one less thing to worry about. And worst comes to worst, he plays fourth line center. But that just means where our team is just flying on all cylinders. If Scott Laughton's on the fourth line, that's because our team is kicking butt. So Jake Voracek. I liked this game this year because he played best defense he's played in a long time. If you can take that into next year with a little bit better of an offensive game, and I say that for the entire top 6, and that was in the whole season, in my opinion. There were definitely spurts, especially at the end there, where the team was really taking off. But offensively, they need to be more consistent on the entire 82-game series. And if there is 82 games or whatever, the pace, they got to do a little bit better. Not bad, but just not where they should be. And I think they know that, and I think we know that. And that's really what we're talking about next year. Couturier, obviously, I mean, he's the backbone of the team's drive at this point. I mean, it's him and Giroux together. I would say, I would even say Voracek, Hayes. There is that leadership core in the forwards. Konechny, but again, Sean Couturier, he does it all. I said in my breakdown video, he's a number 1 defenseman at center. he does it all. Leadership, and I could see him being captain eventually when Giroux either retires or leaves the team for whatever reason. Claude Giroux, I think he could have had a better year. I think he had that baby year that seems to get a lot of the players. I'm not a father, but from what I understand, it sounds pretty practical, especially the situation that they were under, not being able to see your family. From what I understand, all the players went home immediately. So these are things that make sense to me. So Giroux played well. Konechny during the season, I thought, was obviously, we all thought, all-star player. I mean, breakout year for him. I wouldn't read too much into the one bad playoffs. I mean, you can look at plenty of NHL players who have had a bad playoff or a mediocre one and then had an exceptional one down the line, or maybe were exceptional at one point and then struggled and then were exceptional again. It's like, this is what it is. It's always like this. It's always like this. If it's like this, that's the best player in the league. You can look at almost any player's numbers. If the numbers just keep going up like that, he's probably top 5 in the league. But you don't have to be top 5 in the league to win championships or to be a great player. Michael Raffl, he's just solidified himself as a vet. I mean, even I thought we'd walk away from him at this point, but he kind of is built for the new age game. I mean, he's physical enough, he's fast enough, he's got a good enough shot, he's definitely smart, plays good defense. I can see him. I can even see him getting re-signed maybe an extra year afterwards. Maybe just maybe retire. Maybe do another year somewhere else as the Flyers just become deeper. Maybe it'll become a little harder for him to stick with the team. But there's no reason to move along from him. He still looks young and everything. So good year for Michael Raffl, and in the playoffs I thought he was great, even fighting through injuries. Obviously at the end he kind of was clearly playing through injury. At least I think a lot of guys were. And probably won't hear about them either. I'm noticing that not a lot of injuries were reported. And if you've been watching hockey for as long as I've been watching, you've got to be kidding me. That's all I gotta say. So Joel Farabee, Joel Farabee and Russ Cohen. Credit to Russ Cohen. He pointed this out in the beginning. A guy like Farabee, while he does have the sense, the skill, and all that stuff to play the NHL game, the wear and tear got to him a little bit this year. But having said that, the fact that he's so slight of frame and he lasted and played in the playoffs, I mean, guys, that's pretty freaking awesome. I was talking about Simone Gagne, and like that, the Gagne was doing that stuff. Gagne was the slender, thin dude who was good at two-way, could score some goals. Maybe he won't be a 40-goal scorer like Gagne, but if he's a 30-goal scorer even, putting up 70 points a year, playing top-line minutes, that's a win. 70, 80-point players. These are all-star players. All right, so Joel Farabee, Pitlick, really good year for him. I think we would like to see him re-sign, but it depends how much he wants. Aube-Kubel definitely getting re-signed. I would say breakout year for him in some respect. More just like a jump in development. Really good stuff. Thoroughly enjoyed the season from him physically. I like that he kind of made his way up as the season went on, which means that his game got stronger. I was worried about him because he was really good in juniors, and he started off really great in the Phantoms, but then took a step back, and then, like I said, took a step back, but then boom, kind of jumped another level, and I expect more. He's still pretty young. Third-line role seems definitely possible for him on a regular basis, being maybe even like a 40-point player in the NHL at one point. He's really tenacious. He's got a big heart. He kind of reminds me of Travis Konechny a lot of ways. He's kind of like a poor man's Travis Konechny. Just with the skill level. He doesn't have the same skill level, but he's a little bit stronger. Not as fast, but he's got a good motor on him. I like him. I like him a lot, and I suspect he'll probably get, hopefully, a multi-year contract and not just a 1 year. So, Aube-Kubel, good year for him. James Veit and Riemsdyk. Again, a little bit of that baby fever. I think people should give him a break from that sense. I think in the first half of the playoffs, I was thoroughly upset with his play. Out of all of the players, he was actually the most disappointing in the first half. After getting benched, I loved his turnaround. I loved his response. But again, that's why it's so frustrating, because I know who James Van Riemsdyk is, and I know what he's capable of. And when the fire was lit under his butt, he kind of woke up. So, put in a few goals, helped the team tremendously at the end there. But again, if you want to survive in the NHL with that kind of contract and not get bought out or traded with value, to just get off of a team, you cannot play the way that he was playing. I do trust that he will turn it around. I think it's going to be difficult to move him with 3 years left on his contract. But that's the one guy where I can see the Flyers taking a look at moving him. I think a lot of people will probably agree with me on that. The question is how to do it. It's a lot more feasible than people assume, in my opinion. The option might be, is there really a better option that we're going to get? For $7 million, I think the Flyers probably will look heavily. I do think it's possible, and we might see James Van Riemsdyk move this year, but it's not going to be easy, and it might not be for a better player. And if that's the case, is that really something you're all rooting for? What if it is the fourth line center, right? That makes $4.5 million a year. You know, what if it's another Yuri Laterra? Just throwing out ideas there. I would personally like to see James recover next year, and I think he's capable of doing it. Let's move him on a high note because I have a feeling this team is going to put up some numbers next year. Not up to defense. Is Derek Grant. Good season for him. Very good, actually, in the playoffs. I did not like his game. He looked slow. He didn't play terrible, but he wasn't as effective defensively or offensively. He looked a little bit behind the play quite a bit. He got beat. He took some bad penalties. But I do think he's a pretty good player. I just don't know if he's going to end up as a Flyer. I think the Flyers will look for some more speed from their fourth line center. And that's why Nate Thompson played every game, because Nate Thompson actually played well in the playoffs. He did a serviceable job, but during the regular season, I don't even think he would really play on the team. It was the lack of tenacity that this team lacked. Like, you don't want to put Connor Bunnaman, who's a little younger, but Connor Bunnaman, who had a very good second half of the year with the Flyers. Yeah, I was satisfied with that. I mean, Lindblom as well. I mean, A+. Fight cancer, come back in the same year. I mean, yeah, breakout year for him. We all know that him at full blast on this team in the playoffs and all of that. Things could have been so different. I mean, we include Patrick. You guys, these are game-changing players. This maybe would have been our top line by the end of the year of Patrick, Lindblom, and Konechny. Like, if you think about the beginning of the season and who was excelling, that would have been maybe the top line on the team. And you think about adding that line on here, you're talking about a team that now lines up with Tampa Bay offensively. You know? And we're not there, and that guarantee is not there, but it shows it's a process. And luckily we have Frost, who I think will have a better shot next year. So the defense, let's move on to the defense real quick. Provorov, great season overall, ups and downs as well. Again, overplayed. We definitely overplay him. We rely on him too heavily, and that's why people see his flaws. But the kid plays every minute of the game. He's exceptional, and we saw the heroics in the playoffs. I love watching him play, and eventually you're going to see a lot of his mistakes. They're going to disappear, and you're going to be like, wow, thank God we have him, because he is really special. Travis Sanheim, I love him as a player, and actually in the playoffs, even though he struggled at times in the playoffs, you just see where he's going. He's not Provorov again. Provorov is like a robot, but you see that Sanheim is a top pairing defender. Let's go to Myers. Myers, yeah, same thing. He's like a year behind Sanheim in development, in age as well. It shows, and he's not really that far behind. And you look at those three players, and the Flyers are really just set at least from a talent standpoint there. They'll always need to have good players around them. But those three basic players, that's a backbone that's pretty impressive. Niskanen, excellent regular season. Struggled in the playoffs, had a better second run. If he still has more in the tank, I would like him here still long term, but we'll see. He did get weird down in the playoffs, which I think is interesting because that's not what I expected personally. So maybe I'm wrong about his longevity, but we'll see. Next year, I do expect at the very least, maybe he drops to the bottom pairing or second pairing defender and Myers moves up, or maybe we bring somebody in. Maybe that's our offseason acquisition, is for a veteran top-end defender, which would be really interesting. I've seen some names thrown around there. I doubt they're available, but I love the idea of bringing an upper echelon defenseman to play with Provorov. You solidify that top four, and you're talking about a Stanley Cup team. Having said that, you're entering a expansion draft. You're probably not going to put all your cards down when you risk losing one of your top defensemen the next year. So I would not expect anything like that. So defenseman-wise, Braun, I think he had a really good regular season. I think he's a solid bottom pairing defenseman at this point in his career. I don't expect the Flyers to re-sign him, potentially, but I think realistically there's a good chance we're going to look for somebody faster overall, just to add to our speed. I think either size, we'll go somebody even bigger, or we'll go speed. Sam Moran could be back, but he's gonna have to work his way back. He's been out for a while. Robert Haig, I think I really like him. Everybody loves Haig. I think he has a chance to be better, and maybe he'll take Braun's spot next year permanently. Maybe he'll keep his spot on that bottom pairing, especially if Shane Gostisbehere is traded. Ghost had a decent showing this year at times, sometimes upper echelon, sometimes bad, and then some mediocrity there in between, and then just not getting played. Robert Haig probably will be here for a while. Moran's still around. Ghost, like I said, is at risk to being lost anyway, so unfortunately we risk losing him regardless. So let's talk about the goalies. I'm sure I'm missing other defensemen, Friedman and so on, but we'll do more reviews of this stuff throughout the summer. But just let's talk about the goalies. I'll do Elliott first. Elliott, I think, good chance of bringing him back next year. You start to just get comfortable with him just because he plays well every time he's out there. He hasn't really had any bad games. He hasn't been perfect. He hasn't been the best goalie in the league, but he's definitely been really good at times, and he's held up when the Flyers needed him. And he clearly doesn't have a problem being Carter Hart's backup. The mental energy is there. He recognized where he is. I'm sure he would appreciate not moving again. He also has a young baby and a young child. I think at this point he probably would look for that stability, so maybe one more year for Brian Elliott and net for the Flyers. But I think a successful year for him, and showed everybody still got it. And the guy keeps plugging away. I mean, whatever it is that Elliott's doing, I mean, he's lasting. He's lasting. The guy's got a solid game. And then the heart of the team, Carter Hart. I mean, met expectations. That's on all cylinders. I expected a superstar. We got one. I mean, I don't know what more people want. I mean, this is the first time the Flyers actually have a goalie that's like, hey, yeah, be jealous. It's going to be really fun to play like the New Jersey Devils, when they have to see that they have to play our Martin Brodeur. I brought this up. This is going to start being a thing. People can still doubt him. I think he arguably still was the best goalie in these playoffs. And we lost. So we didn't even play that well. Can you imagine the Flyers played better in front of him? These are interesting things. These are things that are happening. Remember, the Flyers are a young team with a very young defense. And we were rattled. We were definitely rattled. We were shook against a team that I would say does have a little more veteran presence. But Barry Trotz, just a hell of a coach, got his team. They outplayed us as a team. They just outplayed us. They out-hustled us. It wasn't hustle's even the wrong word. They were just, the focus was there. They were hungrier to the pucks because they knew where to be. They had tighter puck support all throughout the series. Montreal even had better puck support than the Flyers. Flyers just got away with it because they were a better team. And that's what was the disappointment this year. That's the downside. Is where was the team that ended with a 10-game win streak and lost there at the end? But where's that team, right? We saw some of that. Still rebound really well. The talent's there, the structure's there, but it wasn't at the same level that we needed it to win a Stanley Cup because it's really goddamn hard. But we're getting there. And I think this is a sign of things to come. And I wouldn't expect a ridiculously crazy offseason, but I expect an interesting one and some new faces. There's already some young players who are going to be joining this team, and with whatever's going on with COVID, and if there's no AHL season, all these guys are going to be tight with the team all year round, so they're going to be practicing with the coach on a regular basis, and it's going to get interesting. The Flyers might have to get creative, right? The salary cap might stagnate for the next 2-3 years, so it's going to get interesting. It's going to be interesting. With limitations, create opportunities. And with opportunities, create opportunities for victories. Championships are not won overnight. Even though sometimes it feels like it for other teams, they definitely have struggled to get there. We have felt our first taste of loss of victory. We thought victory was in sight and it was gone. That's it. We're a contender now. That's what that feels like. Get ready. Feels pretty good.